Once again, welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe. Today we have an honor to talk to Rabbi Dr. Joshua Berman, who we're going to talk about the Hebrew Bible and how a modern Jew can think about it. Why does Torah provide multiple versions of its laws and stories? Is the accounts given in Tanakh, that is Hebrew Bible, historically correct? Was there an Exodus? Can a Jew, a secular Jew, seeking to be intellectually honest with himself, maintain fidelity to the 13 principles of faith outlined by Maimonides? This is why we asked Dr. Rabbi Joshua Berman to come to Chicago Jewish Cafe and talk to us about it. JB, welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe.
Thank you, Alexander, and greetings to all our friends and viewers in Chicago and beyond.
Let's start. First of all, I want to tell everybody that you have authored a great book, the name Ani Ma'amin, and that is Biblical Criticism, Historical Truth, and the 13 Principles of Faith. It was published last year. We're going to provide a link to it below our video after we are done with this interview. And I think many people should purchase it if they're really interested about themselves as Jews, as people, and as members of humanity. JB, I want to ask you a question. There's, out of 13 principles of faith outlined by Maimonides, there's one which is, I think, number 8, where he says that Torah has been transmitted from Moses to us without any changes whatsoever. Now, I understand from reading you that you said that it was sort of like argument against accusations thrown at Jews by Muslims in Spain. But isn't there also Jewish tradition which says that when our ancestors came back from Babylonian exile, they brought with them a new alphabet and a new text, new language? That is part of our tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And the characters of alphabet that existed at the time of Moses were completely different. So how do you reconcile this thing?
Right. So what you're saying, Alexander, is correct, that the rabbis fully affirm this, that they're, and we know this archaeologically also to be true, that during the time of the First Temple period, the Hebrew script was an ancient Hebrew script, which most of us would not be able to read today unless you've gone to a university and learned how to read it or have taken the time to master it. And that roughly around the beginning of the time of the Second Temple period, the Jews returning from Persia or from Babylon brought with them a different alphabet. In other words, it was the same, Aleph and Bet and Gimel, but the form of the letters was different, and it's the form that we have until this very day. This is why when you see, for example, Dead Sea Scrolls, even though they're very ancient, they're highly legible. If you know the alphabet that you were taught, wherever, if you're capable of reading modern Hebrew script in a newspaper or in a prayer book or in a Bible, then you'll be able to read the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, because they're written in this newer script. Now Maimonides claim that no words no letters of the Torah were changed, what he's referring to there is the content. That is to say that all the words are spelled the same way. Where Maimonides outlines the 13 principles as a whole and the eighth principle in particular, he makes no claims about the forms of the letters. So those two things are kind of unconnected, I think.
But wasn't it the main thrust of accusation on the part of Muslims, especially that anti-Semite of early 11th century, that Jews were changing dots and little elements of the text? And here we're talking about complete change, and in rewriting, there's always a possibility of mistake.
Oh, any copying, any copyist, even if the letters are the same form, we know.
And that was the basis of the accusation against us.
Yeah, well, okay. What that's referring to is, there's been a longstanding tradition in Muslim thought that the Torah is in fact a divine document, but the Jews have falsified it. That is, there's an original Torah somewhere out there which is perfect from the Muslim perspective, but the Jews over time had added things, taken things out, falsified things, so that the Torah that we Jews have, as far as a longstanding tradition in Muslim thought is concerned, is now invalid because it's been falsified. But that claim, and they often ascribe much of the falsified material to Ezra, in the 5th century, let's say BCE. That claim is that we have actually, in the terms of the content of the text, have falsified things. But I'm not aware that and this is my ignorance, but I'm not aware, from what I do know, that the Muslim claim of Jewish falsification of scripture has to do with changing the form of the letters themselves.
The way I understand it and the way I read that guy's text, it's exactly what he's talking, at least that's what he's starting with. And then he takes it from there. He goes and says, well, there's more than this was changed.
I'm not familiar with that section of the particular theologian that we're speaking about here is a very prominent figure in Muslim thought. His name is Ibn Hazm, who lived in the 11th century in Cordoba. And he has a whole treatise about, how wicked the Jews are. And it's as anti-Semitic as anything written in the 20th century. And a long critique of the Torah, which is actually longer, more systematic, and more comprehensive than, let's say, the critique of the Torah that was rendered by Benedict Spinoza in the 17th century, who's often thought of as the father of modern biblical criticism. So I don't recall that he, at least from what I've seen, we don't have the text of Ibn Hazm's work exists only in Arabic, and I think it's been translated into Spanish as well.
I did not read it in Arabic. I read it in English translation.
Right. So I'm curious where you found that.
You can find it on Wikipedia.
In Wikipedia, right? So I'd have to see this. I'd have to see the section. I'm not familiar with the claim about.
In any case, I'm interested in the basic concept of 13 principles. I mean, here we have, for several thousand years, no Jew allowed himself to make an outline of principles the Jews were supposed to believe. Now, we know that Rabbi Akiva, when asked about it, said, well, love your neighbor as yourself is the main principle, and then everything else, and then Hillel was saying some things, and we also, I would like you, because you're a great student of Maimonides, I mean, to explain to me why Maimonides was put under harem by French rabbis.
Well, I can speak more about, I don't know if it had to do with the principles per se. I think that it had to do more with Maimonides' introduction of philosophy.
But I thought that that was one of the things, that the rabbis consulted was Nachmanides, and Nachmanides was against the very idea of principles.
I haven't seen Nachmanides' objection. There are others, though, that objected to it. It's a very fascinating topic, the whole topic of a catechism of beliefs, a creed of beliefs, of statements, that we as Jews have to, sign off on. And if you sign off, you're a good Jew, and if you don't sign off, you're a bad Jew. This notion actually has a very long and convoluted history that you somewhat alluded to. I'll just start off by saying that it's remarkable that in the Bible and in the Talmud, there is no word for belief. No word for, that's pretty remarkable, considering that we think that the Tanakh, the Bible, is all about belief and beliefs, things that you sign off on. And the Talmud certainly also must be about that. There is no word for a belief, what we call a belief, the belief that, fill in the blank. No word for
you
that.
mean there's no word for emunah?
That's right. That's right. You don't find it in that in the sense that we use today. What is a person's belief, or what Rav Sadia Gaon, right, who's living, I guess, in the 10th century, he wrote a book about beliefs called Emunot Videot, beliefs and opinions. But the use of those terms is something that he made up. That didn't exist beforehand. Now, it's important to realize that even though in earlier periods there was no word for this, when you have in a culture the absence of a word, that says a lot. It says that there's some gap between where we are and where they are. Okay, it does not mean that beliefs weren't important at all. We have to understand what it is that was different back then than now. And I think that, and by the way, in ancient religions, all the ancient religions, ancient Egypt, ancient Mesopotamia, Ugarit, Hittite religion, all these ancient religions, none of them have a word for beliefs. None of them. And this is not an accident. So we need to understand, where did beliefs begin? Beliefs really begin, having a word for beliefs, begins with Christianity. And the reason that none of these older religions, whether we're talking about Judaism, or biblical religion, or whether we're talking about, ancient Egyptian religion or Babylonian or Assyrian religion, is this. It is not immediately apparent that having a catechism, a creed, is really the right way to go. The best way for me to explain this is with an illustration. If I were to say to you, Alexander, or to any of our viewers, let's say I'm speaking to people who have been married for a long time, okay? And I say to you, what are the 10 most important ideas about marriage, okay? Now, I don't know, I've been married almost 30 years. I'm sure many people out there have been married even longer. And if you were to, just shoot out that question to me, point blank, Rabbi Berman, what are the 10 most important ideas about being married? I don't know. I would think I would start. I'd have to. The truth, I've never thought about it. I couldn't tell you what the number one is, or the number two, or why number two is number two and not number one. And the reason is this: if you say something like, I guess, I don't know, somewhere up there must be communication, communication between spouses. Everyone would agree that's yes, communication is very important. However, what do we mean by communication? Does communication mean whatever I'm thinking, I should say? No, I should not say everything that I'm thinking. Does communication mean whatever I'm thinking, I should say right now? No, the timing is pretty critical. So my point here is that, you can try to give something very short and sweet that's important, and communication is important, but what exactly communication means is going to be very dependent on whole range of other things going on between me and my spouse and what's going on and how to say things. And this varies. My point here is that even as everyone can agree that communication is very important, the nitty-gritty of it is so dependent on the specific time and circumstance of what's going on. And it's the same thing. All of these ancient religions held the same thing. It's not that they had no concepts about the gods. It's not that what you felt or what you thought was unimportant. It's that you couldn't legislate it and phrase it in a one-sentence thing. If you want to speak about fidelity to the Almighty, well, then we need to talk about the specific case and the challenges that are going on. And then it becomes very rooted and concrete what it is that we mean when we're talking about fidelity to the Almighty. And so I think that a kind of a lived reality of living out principles, this is always how Judaism functioned, not by formulating them as something that you repeat or you just kind of say by heart and check it off. You live it. And the way in which it's lived varies from day to day and from year to year.
Are you saying the 13 principles of Maimonides mean nothing?
No, I'm saying that I think that there were always very important ideas that Jews lived by. And the reason that we have, I don't have a Tanakh here, the reason Tanakh has to be such a fat book. I mean, why does it have to be such a fat book? Couldn't the Tanakh have just said, here, look, we have about 10, 13 principles. Here they are on one page. Why do I need 1,000 pages? Why? Because what the Tanakh is doing is it's giving you many, many circumstances in which these big ideas are being lived out in specific historical circumstances. And the way, the configuration of it, and the variations of how this is fulfilled, these great ideas, is all time specific and location specific. And so it's the ideas are very important, but they're so important that you need to have all the details fleshed out to really get the an understanding.
But Maimonides fleshes them out. Somebody else fleshes them out.
A little bit, yeah. So what you have is,
and we are having now divided community.
Yeah, much less than in other areas of Jewish literature like law. But so, for example, Maimonides isn't the first one to discuss principles of faith. We have, I think Rav Sadia Gaon has one place where he discusses it, but it's buried somewhere in a text. He didn't, it was kind of like almost a mnemonic device. Here's some nice things to think about God: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Another sage living in the Muslim world, Rabbeinu Hananel from Kiruan, has in his commentary to Exodus a list of 4 principles of faith. And this was something that the Christians had developed, the Muslims adopted it. It was a nice way of, it was a kind of a way of focusing people on some things. If you're trying to missionize, as both Christianity and Islam did, then to missionize, it's very helpful to have, listen, folks, this is what you have to sign on to. Here's a little list. You believe this, you're saved. And Judaism was never about missionizing. And this is why maybe we've never really succeeded to missionize. And we've never really.
What is Judaism about then?
Judaism is the Almighty's desire to establish a community of righteousness. And these laws are all given in order to form that culture of righteousness.
Community of righteous, right?
Yeah.
Or righteousness.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And did he succeed?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe it's a work in progress. I think that we've had our high points and many low points. When you see, for example, at least if scripture is correct in what it tells us, early in his career, Solomon seemed to be doing a pretty good job. The world came up from all around. People were impressed with him, about his wisdom.
Despite his 900 wives?
That's at the end. I said early in his career. That's later in his career.
So
Yeah.
what happened to him? I'm sorry, we're getting off the topic that I want to talk, but you're bringing those people, and it's
Well, my reading of First Kings is that success got to him. It's hard when you're at the top of the world to keep things from getting out of balance.
Very interesting.
That's my reading of it.
If God could be wrong about the early part of humanity and he had to flood them, I guess somebody can be wrong about King Solomon as well.
Maybe it's not God being wrong about King Solomon. It's about King Solomon being wrong about King Solomon.
Okay, so that's fine. But for me, I have to tell you this, that I, of course, believe that Torah, and not only the first 5 books of Moses, but Torah in a wider sense as a collection of sacred Jewish literature from the beginning till now is God-given to us. That is, God using Jews to write the text for Jews and humanity. That's my understanding of Torah.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, getting back to these 13 principles of faith, there's things in it that I'm not going to agree with. And Maimonides says toward the end, anybody who disagrees even a little bit with these 13 principles of faith should be hated and ostracized.
Yeah, but that was never accepted, Alexander. In other words, what's so fascinating about the 13 principles of faith is that even to this very day, okay, there is no consensus as to the formulation of the 13 principles of faith. You will not find.
I understand there's no consensus. That's why I asked, why the northern, the French rabbis, put herem on, basically excommunicated Maimonides from Jewish people.
Right. So again, I'm not competent to speak about that. Okay. But what you see is that the 13 principles of faith are taken in all sorts of different directions by very many authorities. There were medieval rabbinic authorities that rejected the whole notion, the whole enterprise of principles of faith, because they saw that Jews were concentrating on beliefs and not on performance of the mitzvot, the commandments. The principles of faith have become much more important and significant in the last 200 years relative to the previous 800 years.
Why? What happened?
Oh, it's very simple. You never have anywhere until the 19th century any notion in any rabbinic writing that if some other than what Maimonides writes, but nobody follows him on this, that if a person is deviating from the 13 principles of faith, then they are ostracized, they are kicked out of the community, they are excommunicated. You can't find a single example of that anywhere. Now, there are beliefs that have very weighty halachic significance. There are certain beliefs that a person has, then if they do ritual slaughter, shchita, then it's disqualified. There are certain beliefs that if a person has, then their testimony in a Jewish court, in a Beit Din, is rendered disqualified. But it's never, the sources for that never use the term, they say, oh, well, this is one of the 13 principles of faith, okay?
Well, I understand that those 13 principles of faith were never really
no, but so what I'm telling you is that they become very important in the 19th century. And the reason I was building up to this, you were asking, is this. Around the time of the Enlightenment, okay, the late 18th century, then what happens is that now in Europe, the doors of emancipation are thrown open. And Jews have the option of leaving the ghetto, physically leaving the ghetto, and culturally leaving the ghetto. And they do, and they start to do so en masse. And this had never existed before. That is, until about the late 18th century, Jews everywhere had always been observant. It was very rare to find a Jew that didn't observe the commandments, because that's what the whole community was doing. And so what happens is that there becomes a need for the Orthodox community and for Orthodox authorities to kind of create an us-them boundary. Who's in and who's out? Because all these Jews who are now leaving the fold or leaving observance are a threat culturally, or are a threat systematically to those that are still remaining faithful to all the traditions. And so a whole series of walls and boundaries begin to be erected so that those who are still on the inside, who are still loyal to the tradition, will know who are one of the good guys. Are you with us, or are you outside of us? In fact, the very term Orthodox Jewry, Orthodox Judaism, is from this time. That is to say, in the 16th century and anything earlier, no one would have understood what you were saying if you were to say Orthodox Jewry. This is Jews. Orthodox, the need for a title, we are the Orthodox Jews, is because we are not the Reformed Jews, we are not the assimilated Jews. So there's a whole series of boundaries that go up. And the 13 principles of faith are part of that boundary, because now authorities are looking for a kind of a litmus test. Are you a good Jew or not a good Jew? And so now, since these principles had always kind of been on the books, but no one had really given them, great importance, they suddenly become very greatly important. And to this day, that's how a lot of rabbis look at them.
So you're saying that when the legal walls or the borders have been taken down, the Jews needed to establish their own understanding of who is within the borders and who is out.
Yep. That's right.
And did they succeed?
Well, I don't know how we measure success, but
success is that the Orthodox knows who's in, who's out. Or Reformer knows who's in, who's out. For example,
well, they have their own definitions. I'm speaking only from within the tradition.
Just one second. You said they. You see already. Boom.
Sure.
Not Jews. They. Reformers.
Well,
now,
right, because I can't speak for what are the walls and boundaries that Reformed Jews have. I think even within themselves,
but among Orthodox Jews, what you call Haredi Jews in Israel would not accept your way of Judaism as appropriate.
Yes and no, partly yes, partly no. Listen, Alexander, the issues that I discuss in my book, I was invited to Williamsburg, Brooklyn, right? That's the capital of the Satmar universe, to give talks within the Satmar community. Now I have to be honest, I wasn't speaking to the entire Satmar community, but there are a lot of people there, I will tell you, who are deep in that community, big hats, long payout, and they want to hear about this stuff.
It's in the United States.
Yes.
Would Satmar invite you in Jerusalem?
I have people here in Israel too who are interested in what I'm doing.
Very interesting.
Alexander, let me explain something.
Yes.
The walls are coming down everywhere. Okay. The cultural walls that the Haredi world has built.
What do you mean? What do you mean they're coming down?
What I mean,
how can they come down?
What I mean is that in this day and age, more and more people, more than half in the Haredi world, have access to the internet. Once you have access to the internet, the walls begin to have holes in them. There are certain things you can put a filter about. Okay, biblical criticism isn't one of them. There's no filter that I know of that you can put on your computer that keeps out questions about who wrote the Bible, when is it from, doesn't this seem to contradict, etc., 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 and a zillion other questions. And so there is an incredible intellectual ferment that's going on throughout the Haredi world. You don't see it discussed on the front pages of their newspapers, But you go online and it's happening, I would say, under the stender, as we say, the little benches that they use to hold the books inside the study hall. Lots of questioning going on and lots of curiosity. And I would say, Alexander, that I get a lot of correspondence about my book. More than half of it is from the right-wing part of the Orthodox spectrum, what's called the Haredi world.
Why? What is their interest? I know, when I talk to strictly Orthodox, I do not call them Haredi, but strictly Orthodox or whatever it is, scrupulously observant, whatever you want to call it. When I talk to them, I find many problems with their understanding of Torah or Hebrew Bible or the whole thing. They do not know Jewish history. That's number one. They do not know even Tanakh.
True.
I mean, outside of 5 books, they know nothing.
True. Many of them, it's true. Anyway.
But this is their approach. I mean, they say, this is what we expected to know and nothing else. Right. Anything else is a problem.
Right. So there are many people like that. And I will tell you that there are many others, perhaps numerically smaller than the group that you're talking about, but a growing population of people who come from those types of worlds, and who really are intellectually honest and view honesty as a key component of serving the Almighty. And therefore, when a reasonable question arises, it's something that they want to get a reasonable answer to.
Well, I do not know. To me, it sounds very promising, as you said, but on the other hand, I also have a problem with this approach. As you see, I'm not an Orthodox Jew in the way you imagine or in the way Haredi imagine, especially the way Notarei Karta imagines. I'm a Jew, the way I see it, I'm a chassid of one mitzvah. What mitzvah is that? I'm not going to talk about now. One mitzvah.
Okay.
And for me, it's very important. Torah is the source of, it's foundational document of our people, the way I see it. And I see Torah as a gift of God, not simply a gift of God, but a book of instruction from God. Okay. Now, the way I interpret it is different probably than the way you interpret or other people interpret, but that's the way I interpret. And I do believe the Jewish people are the carriers of this book.
So far, I think we're in agreement, Alexander. Maybe I'm Orthodox like you are.
Well, I do not know if it's good. That was the question, because I know I'm committed all the way till my death. Just kill me now. Tell me, stop being a Jew or kill me. I'd say kill me. But for Jewish people as the whole, I'm concerned about Jewish people, and I'm concerned about strength of Jewish people, and I'm concerned about our unity, because without unity, there's no strength. I mean, take a look at what's happening now in Israel. Take a look at what's happening in the United States, in Russia even, and even, what am I saying even? I mean, in Russia, Jews just came out from under the stones, under the bricks just recently, and now they're just acting as Jews, thank God, and things like this. But my question to you is, what, you say, the title of the book, I believe, Ani Ma'amin. What do we need to do in order to bring our people together? What is the principle? You see, I'm getting back to the principle, to the faith, which I believe maybe is the wrong thing, as you said. But what do you believe we need in order to bring, or to, I do not know if I want all Jews to be thinking the same way as I do. I really don't. But to bring Jews together and to keep on going as a single nation, as a single people.
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer. How do we achieve that unity? I think that it
But
can
if I
only
cannot
exist.
ask this question of you, who in the world can I ask this question?
No, I mean, no, listen, I can tell you what I think unity needs to be based around. That I can answer.
Okay,
How to get everybody to sign on to that. If I did that, I'd be
let's
the
start with
Messiah.
the answer that you
Well,
know.
I think that Jewish unity needs to be predicated on a commitment to Jewish peoplehood that's expressed by marriage, who we marry, by a commitment to raise our children with Jewish education, by a commitment to an interest and an avid support for the Jewish state. That doesn't mean a blanket endorsement of all its policies, but that it's an important issue for us. We see it as our home, whether we live there or not. Jewish unity has to be predicated around a continuity of the Jewish tradition in conversation with modern times. But you have to have some notion of a Shabbat. You have to have a notion of the language. Language is critical. Language is critical. Every Jew should have an obligation to study Hebrew, to learn Hebrew. Hebrew is the language of the Jewish people. Language is what holds every culture together. Cultures that have more, that where different people speak different languages have a very hard time functioning together.
Very
So
good.
I think that
Very good.
These are all things that I think would be cornerstones of what Jewish people would need to rally around in order for there to be greater unity.
Well, basically, I agree with you, except there's one little problem. I disagree with the definition of who is the Jew according to Orthodox reading of Halacha.
All right, I didn't mention that, by the way, but okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I disagree with it. And the reason I disagree with it is very simple, because for the last 1800 years, maybe more, the reading of Halacha, he has denied the fatherhood for children of Jewish fathers and non-Jewish mothers, making them orphans. For me, it's absolutely unacceptable. And not only for me, also for our God. Exodus 22, 22, 23, if you are gonna hurt widow or orphan, they're gonna cry to me, and I'm gonna make your wives widows and your children orphans.
The issue that you raised, Alexander, about dissent, about Jews who feel very connected to Judaism and the Jewish people, but who biologically or genetically have a Jewish father, but not a Jewish mother. This, of course, is a very actual issue here in Israel. And there's a big movement, which I avidly to embrace such people and to find a way to incorporate them into the Jewish people more easily, perhaps, has been the way in which people have converted in these times. That is, that they should have a conversion that basically consists of their commitment to living in Israel and participating in the people here. And that's kind of a movement that's.
But conversion does not solve.
Which is to say that
conversion does not solve this problem. Okay,
fully
so
issues, and I thought we were going to be talking about the issues in the book. So
okay, let's leave this issue aside. But this is, I just needed to let you know,
sure.
Because you mentioned certain things that we need to do or around which we can coalesce, and I'm all for it. But there's certain things, that I cannot just simply accept. Just simply cannot accept. And this is the issue of legal orphanage. Cannot accept. But in any case, talking about the validity of Torah for a secular Jew, I started doing Torah after I went as a volunteer to serve in the Israeli army during the Persian Gulf War.
Wow.
Until then, if anybody would tell me Torah, I would just only smile and say nothing. But when I came back, well, actually from 1989, a year before, when I led 1,500 Jews on march of protest in front of American embassy in Rome, then I understood that without God, without Torah, Jews do not have future. Jews are not people.
Wow. Okay.
And then I went to, when a year later there was war coming in Persian Gulf, I went as a volunteer. And when I came back, then I became obsessed with this Torah. You know, I guess this is a problem with my personality. And 6 years spending, you know, translating, learning Hebrew, translating it 6 years, then the University of Chicago, a year and a half at graduate school and things like this. And
oh, wow.
Translating interested. And for me, talking to you, as I mentioned before, you know, your work in the area of Hebrew Bible is just absolutely commendable. There's absolutely, I do not know of anybody else that I can mention that I would read with such attention and with such respect. Well, maybe I can name a few other people, but I really like that, especially, you know, as I said, your introduction to the Casuto's documentary Hypotheses, which to me was a great introduction. And then I start following all your books that you've written and your articles, and I really like it. And that's why, you know, I invited you, because I really wanted to talk to you finally after all these years.
I'm honored. I'm honored.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So getting back to the way a modern Jew like you and I should look at Torah. Should we look at Torah as all 5 books, that is in their sense, as all 5 books, except the last few paragraphs, as tradition says, given on Mount Sinai to Moses, you know, and Moses basically acting as a secretary? Or should we look at Torah a little bit differently? How should we look at Torah?
Well, I let me speak for the tradition. I think the tradition as a whole, when you go back and look at what all the sources have in common, rabbinic opinions are committed to the notion that the Torah is divine, the 5 books of Moses, and that just generally speaking, that our tradition has a divine source. Exactly who wrote which part, when, which verses, what exactly does it mean when we say that it's divine? What is the human role or agency in the creation of the text? Here you have many different opinions. Like, just for example, Abraham ibn Ezra, one of the major medieval commentators on the Torah, whose commentary is printed in every major Orthodox version of the Chumash, of the Torah. He writes somewhere that the nature of the revelation to Moses was kind of like a dream or a vision, and Moses had to convert that into words, but that he converted into words. That's what the Ibn Ezra says, which is different than Maimonides. So that, you know, we have lots of views out there about what exactly revelation meant, about which verses may or may not have been written by Moses. The key thing is to understand the authority that's behind the text. And all rabbinic figures had a commitment that the authority that stands behind the text is the divine authority.
You know, our time is coming up, and I have to say, with what you said, the last few paragraphs, I cannot be in full agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that Torah is our gift from God. You know, how it was done, who wrote it, who put this word or that word, this way or that way. I mean, this, in my mind, it's of course human beings, but it's human beings who are part of the process. Mm-hmm. With God using us, the Jews, as his span to continue writing this document.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are even many sources that will say that even the rabbinic tradition of the oral law is also under some type of divine inspiration.
Absolutely.
What exactly that means, I don't know. Yeah.
I
And
agree.
I think that's true. Yeah.
As
Rabbi,
us talking to each other at this moment is continuation of this Torah. Now, whether it's
Okay.
going to become known to future generations is the question. That is,
Well, if this podcast does well, maybe it'll get known to future generations.
maybe not. But the thing is that it's not in our hands. You see, it's in the hands of God. What ideas, what text, what words end up being patrimony of our people and which just fall by wayside. JB, it was a great pleasure to talk to you. And I hope we'll get a chance to do it again. And I thank you very, very much. And I wish you the very best.
Okay, Alexander, and to all the viewers and listeners, thank you for the attention. And maybe we continue discussions like this. They're very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.